All right, so you're getting ready for a Selenium interview.
Smart move coming here
Oh,
to really kind of dive deep into some of those tougher questions.
yeah, those tricky ones that they might throw at you.
Mhm.
We've got this great article that was just published, what, last month?
Last month, yeah.
Outlining 37 of them.
37 tricky Selenium interview questions and answers.
But we're not just going to, give you the answer.
Yep.
We're going to unpack the why behind it.
Yeah, give you the deeper
So
understanding.
you can really impress.
That's what it's all about, these
Right.
interviewers. Let you know the basic Selenium commands, right?
Right.
But acing the interview is all about showing you understand the nuances, the trade-offs, when to use one approach over another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what these tougher questions are designed to do, to dig into.
Okay, that makes sense. But,
Yeah.
sometimes these questions, I feel like they're designed to trip you up.
I get that, but interviewers aren't trying to be malicious.
Right.
They need someone who can not only write the code, but also anticipate problems and explain their solutions clearly.
Okay.
And these trickier questions help them to gauge if you've got that deeper level of understanding.
So it's more about problem solving than just knowing every single, command.
Exactly. It's about thinking on your feet, showing you can handle real-world scenarios, and you're not just going to blindly copy-paste code from Stack Overflow.
Gotcha. This article also emphasizes knowing Selenium's limitations.
Yes.
Why is that so important, especially in an interview setting?
Think of it this way. If you walk into an interview and you're claiming that Selenium can do everything,
Oh, yeah.
you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Selenium is fantastic for automating web browsers,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a magic bullet.
Yeah. What are some examples of things that it can't handle?
Sure.
I mean, besides, obvious things like making me coffee.
Well, Selenium, it excels at testing standard and responsive websites,
Right.
but it's not designed for things like automating desktop applications or native mobile apps. And even within web testing, things like PAP-TCHA challenges can be tricky.
Right. Those squiggly letters
Yeah.
that make you question your own humanity.
Exactly.
So how does a savvy interviewee handle a question about the limitations?
Well, it's all about honesty and demonstrating that you've thought about these things.
Okay.
For example, you might say, Selenium is great for web UI testing, but I'd explore tools like Appium for mobile app automation.
Okay.
So it shows that you're aware of the broader testing landscape.
It's like saying, I know Selenium is powerful, but I'm not afraid to use other tools
Exactly.
when the situation calls for it.
It shows that you're not afraid to acknowledge those limitations and that you're thinking critically about the right tool for the job.
Okay, let's dig into some specific examples from the article.
Yeah, let's do it.
First up, managing iframes.
Okay.
Now, iframes, they always make my head spin a little bit.
I get it.
What makes them so tricky, and why do interviewers love to ask about them?
Well, iframes are essentially web pages embedded within other web pages. So imagine like those little box ads that you sometimes see or embedded videos.
Uh-huh.
Those are often iframes.
Okay.
Now, the challenge is that Selenium by default interacts with the top-level page.
Mm-hmm.
So to work with elements inside an iframe, you need to specifically tell Selenium to switch its focus.
So it's like trying to have a conversation with someone in a really crowded room.
That's a great analogy.
You need to zero in on their voice
Exactly.
and block out all the other noise.
You got it.
Okay.
So interviewers, they might ask you things like how you handle elements within an iframe,
Mm-hmm.
how to switch back to the main page, or even how to deal with nested iframes.
Oh my God.
Those iframes within iframes.
It sounds like a labyrinth.
It can be.
Okay, let's move on to another one that seems to pop up a lot.
Okay.
The robot class.
Oh,
Now, this sounds intriguing.
it is.
What is this mysterious robot class?
Okay, so imagine this scenario.
Okay.
The interviewer asks you, how would you test a feature that involves uploading a file? No, Selenium itself can't handle those operating system level file dialog boxes.
Right.
That's where the robot class swoops in to save the day.
So it's like Selenium's secret weapon
Yeah, you could say that.
for interacting with things outside the browser window.
Precisely. It's a Java utility that lets you simulate keyboard inputs, mouse clicks, even move the cursor around the screen.
Mhm.
Think of it as a little virtual robot doing your bidding.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
So it can handle file uploads, but what else can you do with it?
Well, anything that you can do with a keyboard and mouse,
Wow.
it can be helpful for things like automating interactions with desktop applications,
Okay.
simulating specific keystrokes, or even taking screenshots programmatically.
Okay, so knowing the robot class is like having a secret weapon in your Selenium arsenal.
Definitely a good one to have in your back pocket.
Now let's talk about something that's a bit more conceptual.
Okay.
The page object model, or POM.
Yes, PO.
I've heard this acronym thrown around a lot, but like, what's the big deal?
So POM is all about making your test code cleaner, more organized, and easier to maintain.
Okay.
So think about it. Without POM, your test scripts might have locators and actions scattered all over the place.
Yeah?
And then if the website's UI changes,
Uh-huh.
you're stuck updating a ton of code
Yeah, I can see how that would get messy quickly.
very quickly.
So how does POM solve this problem?
Well, it's like building with Lego bricks.
Okay.
POM lets you create separate classes
Mm-hmm.
called cage objects
Right.
to represent each page of your application.
Right.
And these classes contain all the locators and methods for interacting with elements on that specific page.
So it's like having a blueprint for each page.
Exactly.
Makes it easier to update and manage.
If a button changes its ID, you only need to update it in the corresponding page object.
Right.
Not every single test that uses that button.
Gotcha.
So it's a huge time saver,
Yeah.
and it makes your tests much more robust in the long run.
All right, so POM is like the Marie Kondo of Selenium,
I like that.
tidying up our code.
Yeah.
And sparking joy in our tests.
Absolutely.
Now let's dive into a topic that's crucial for avoiding those like frustrating element not found errors. WebDriver weights.
Yes, these are essential.
Why are these weights so important?
Okay, imagine you're trying to click a button that hasn't fully loaded yet.
Yeah.
Without weights, your script might try to interact with it prematurely, causing the test to fail.
Right.
So WebDriver weights, they ensure that your script and the web application are in sync,
Okay.
preventing those timing-related meltdowns.
So they're like the traffic lights of our tests,
I love that analogy.
making sure we don't crash into anything because we're going too fast.
Exactly. You don't want to run a red light.
Okay.
And there are different types of weights,
Okay.
each with its own use case.
Uh-huh.
So you have implicit weights, which set a default waiting time for all elements,
Okay.
while explicit weights let you wait for specific conditions on individual elements, like visibility, clickability, or the presence of text.
So implicit weights are like setting a general patience level.
Yes.
And then explicit weights are more targeted.
Very specific.
Like, hold on, let me know when this element is ready.
Exactly. And for even more control, there's fluent weight, which allows you to fine-tune the polling interval and handle specific exceptions.
Fluent weight sounds like it's for the true Selenium ninjas out there.
It is a bit more advanced, but definitely a good one to know.
Okay, this article also mentions desired capabilities,
Yes.
which sound pretty powerful.
Very powerful.
What's the deal with those?
So imagine you need to test your website across different browsers, versions, and operating systems.
Right, different combinations.
Right.
Yeah.
So desired capabilities let you create the perfect testing environment by configuring those browser settings directly from your Selenium code.
So it's like having your own personal browser factory
No, fair.
where you can order up
Got it.
exactly the configuration you need for each test.
Exactly. You can specify things like browser, name, version, operating system, whether JavaScript is enabled, even things like proxy settings.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is a powerful feature.
I'm already feeling more confident
That's what we like to hear.
about tackling those tricky Selenium questions.
Awesome. We've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, we have.
But there's still more to explore, so stick around. We'll be right back with part 2.
Awesome. I can't wait. Welcome back, Selenium sleuths.
We're back.
We're continuing our deep dive into those tricky interview questions.
That can really make you shine.
Okay, so let's say you're in the hot seat,
Okay.
and the interviewer asks you, how do you get all the options in a drop-down using Selenium?
Oh, good one.
Seems pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but what are they really trying to assess there?
Well, they want to see if you understand how Selenium interacts with web elements and how you approach common UI elements like drop-downs.
Right,
So you've got those select tags in HTML.
right.
And Selenium's select class is your go-to tool for these situations.
Okay, because drop-downs are everywhere
Everywhere.
on websites,
Selecting your country,
building products,
choosing from a list.
all sorts of things.
So how would you explain like your approach
Yeah.
using the select class?
Well, first you'd locate the drop-down element,
Okay.
maybe using its ID or a unique CSS selector, and then you create a select object using that locator.
Okay.
It's like saying, hey, Selenium, I want to work with this specific drop-down menu.
And what's like the magic command to actually like extract all those options?
Well, that's where the getOptions method comes in.
Okay.
It's like saying, show me everything you've got.
All right.
And this method returns a list of all the options within the dropdown.
Okay.
Each one is a separate web element.
So then you could loop through that list
Exactly.
and check if specific options exist.
Or get their text values, even sort them alphabetically.
Right. It's about showing that you can manipulate
Manipulate.
those drop-down elements.
With ease.
Speaking of manipulating elements.
Yeah. I remember struggling with the difference between get text and get attribute.
Oh, yeah, classic one.
When I was first learning Selenium.
This is a good one.
Why do interviewers bring this up, and how can you explain it clearly without getting too technical?
Well, it's about demonstrating that you understand how Selenium interacts with the DOM,
Okay.
the underlying structure of a web page.
Right.
So get text is like looking at the page as a user would. It gives you the visible text of an element.
Okay.
But get attribute lets you peek behind the scenes and grab specific attributes from the HTML code.
Right, like the href attribute of a link.
Yes, perfect example.
Which tells you the destination URL, even though it might not be displayed on the page.
Exactly. You can use get attribute for all sorts of things.
Okay.
Checking element IDs, class names, values of input fields, really anything that's embedded in the HTML.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about something that's essential for writing solid tests.
Yeah. Okay.
Assertions.
Yes, assertions.
Those are the checks that we put in place to make sure the application is behaving as expected.
Absolutely.
But there are different types of assertions, right?
Yes.
What's that key distinction?
One key distinction is between hard asserts and soft asserts.
Okay.
Think of a hard assert as a strict rule.
Okay.
If it fails, the entire test execution stops right there.
Gotcha.
So it's useful when a single failure is critical and you don't want the test to continue.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about those more lenient soft asserts?
So soft asserts are like taking notes of any issues you encounter, but letting the test keep running.
Okay.
So they're great when you want to check multiple conditions and get a comprehensive report of any failures without stopping the entire test prematurely.
Right. So you get the full picture of what went wrong.
Exactly.
Now, within those hard asserts,
Yeah.
there are different types we can use, right?
Yes, you've got the classics like assert equals for checking if two values are equal, assert node equals for making sure they're different.
Yeah. Assert true. Yeah, and assert false for Boolean conditions.
Right.
And then there's assert null and assert not null to check if something is null or not.
Right, it's like having a whole toolbox.
Whole toolbox.
Of checks to make sure that...
To make sure everything's working as expected.
Yeah. Now let's talk about those dynamic elements.
Yes, the tricky ones.
That seem to enjoy changing their attributes or IDs on every page load.
Yes, they do like to keep us on our toes.
How do you explain your approach to handling those slippery elements?
It's a good question.
In an interview setting.
Yeah, so this is a real-world problem that can really trip up testers.
Right.
So if you rely on IDs that change constantly, your locators will break.
Right.
That's why it's so crucial to use robust locators.
Okay.
That target more stable attributes or relationships between elements.
So it's like finding a more reliable landmark.
Exactly.
To navigate to our element.
Yeah.
Even if the street address keeps changing.
I like that analogy.
So instead of relying on flaky IDs, we can use XPaths or CSS selectors that target more consistent properties, like class names, or even text content.
Okay.
And relative locators, which we discussed earlier, are another great option for defining elements based on their position relative to other elements.
Robust locators are our best defense against those shape-shifting elements.
They are our heroes.
Okay, another question that I always found a little bit tricky.
Okay.
How do you handle file uploads using Selenium?
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
Because it always felt a little bit like...
A little bit hacky.
Yeah.
So the most straightforward way is to use the send keys method on the file input element and provide the path to your file.
Right.
But there's a catch.
Okay.
This might not always work if the file upload dialog is handled by the operating system rather than the browser itself.
Yes. I've encountered those stubborn file dialogues before.
Me too.
It's like they're from a different dimension that Selenium can't reach.
You're not wrong.
So in those cases, you might need to call in some reinforcements.
Okay.
So tools like AutoIT specialize in automating Windows interactions.
Right.
So you could create a little AutoIT script to handle the file upload dialog and then integrate it with your Selenium test.
It's like having a specialized agent for those tricky situations.
Exactly the right tool for the job.
But what if you don't want to, like, introduce another tool into the mix?
Good point. Well, remember the robot class that we talked about earlier? You can use it to simulate keystrokes and mouse clicks to navigate the file upload dialog and select the desired file.
Right. The robot class to the rescue once again.
It's a versatile tool.
Okay, let's move on to something that might seem simple, but is often used to gauge your understanding of how web applications work.
Oh, yeah.
Handling cookies in Selenium.
Ah, cookies. Yes.
Why is this important in a testing context?
Good question.
And what are the key things that interviewers want to hear? Well, cookies are those little bits of data that websites store on our computers to remember things like our preferences or login status.
Right.
And in testing, managing cookies is crucial for scenarios like testing shopping cart functionality,
Right.
where you need to maintain the user's logged-in state throughout the test.
Because without cookies, the website might think you're a new visitor
Exactly.
on every single page.
Like, who are you?
And your shopping cart would be empty.
Exactly.
So how does Selenium let us manipulate these digital crumbs?
Well, Selenium provides methods to get add and delete cookies.
Okay.
So you can use get cookies to retrieve all the cookies for the current domain, add cookie to add specific cookies, and delete cookie to, well, get rid of them.
It's like having a cookie jar
I like that.
that we can control from our Selenium code,
Yeah.
adding,
Taking.
or cleaning it out completely.
Exactly.
Okay, one final question for this part,
Okay, bring it on.
and it's a big one. How do you explain the concept of desired capabilities
Right.
and why they're so important?
Okay. So remember how we talked about testing across different browsers, versions, and operating systems?
Right, yeah.
Desired capabilities are your secret weapon
Okay.
for creating the perfect testing environment for each scenario.
So it's like sending a special request to the browser saying, hey, I need you to behave this way for my tests.
Exactly. You can specify the browser name and version, operating system, whether JavaScript should be enabled,
Okay.
and even things like proxy settings.
So if I wanted to test my website on the latest version of Chrome on a Mac,
You got it.
I could use desired capabilities to spin up that exact configuration.
Exactly. And it's not just about different browsers.
Right.
You can use desired capabilities to set up specific mobile device emulators, control browser window size, and much more.
Wow. Desired capabilities are like having your own personal browser and device lab.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this part.
We have.
From handling drop-downs and dynamic elements to mastering those tricky file uploads and managing cookies.
And in the final part, we'll wrap things up and equip you with some final tips
Awesome.
for acing that Selenium interview.
Welcome back, Selenium superstars. We're in the final stretch of our deep dive, and I'm feeling like we've unlocked some serious Selenium secrets.
I think you're right. We've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
from the fundamentals to those tricky questions that can really make you stand out in an interview.
I want to make sure we touch on some of the newer features introduced in Selenium 4.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned earlier that interacting with iframes
Yes.
got a bit of a makeover.
It did get some improvements.
Can you elaborate on how it's improved?
Yeah, so in earlier versions of Selenium, you had to use that driver.switch2.frame method,
Yeah.
which could be a bit cumbersome. But Selenium 4, it gives you more flexibility. You can switch directly to an iframe using its web element or its index.
So it's like having multiple ways to
Yeah.
address those little windows within Windows,
Exactly.
making our code more efficient.
And it reduces the reliance on indexes, which can be brittle
Right.
if the page structure changes.
Now, you also mentioned something called the Chromium DevTools Protocol Integration,
Yes, CDP.
which sounds pretty technical.
It is, but it's really powerful.
Okay, color me intrigued.
Okay.
What's the significance of this for Selenium users?
Well, this is a game changer.
Okay.
So the Chromium DevTools Protocol, or CDP, lets you interact with Chrome-based browsers at a very granular level.
Okay.
And Selenium 4's integration with CDP opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, so let's say you want to test how your website performs under different network conditions.
Okay.
Like simulating a slow 3G connection. Using CDP, you can throttle the network speed
Oh, yeah.
directly within your Selenium tests.
Okay.
Or imagine you need to capture all the network requests made by your website to identify any performance bottlenecks.
Okay.
CDP lets you do that too.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It is. It's like having a secret backdoor to the browser's inner workings.
It really is.
So CDP gives you access to a whole range of features that were previously unavailable, making your tests much more comprehensive and insightful.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something that we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Selenium's limitations.
Yes.
It's important to acknowledge that even the most powerful tools have their boundaries.
Absolutely. Selenium is fantastic for web browser automation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if you need to automate desktop applications or native mobile apps, you'll need to explore other tools.
It's like using the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
You wouldn't try to fix a leaky faucet with a hammer.
Exactly.
Are there any specific scenarios within web testing that might challenge Selenium?
One area where Selenium traditionally struggles is with CAP-TCCHA challenges.
Oh.
Those distorted text images or puzzles
Right.
designed to prevent bots are tricky to automate reliably.
CAPI-TCHAs are the bane of my existence.
Oh, I hear you on that.
Is there any way around those roadblocks?
There are some workarounds, but they're not always foolproof.
Okay.
Sometimes the best approach is to collaborate with your development team to provide a bypass mechanism specifically for testing environments.
So it's about being resourceful
Yeah,
and finding creative solutions when Selenium hits those limits.
exactly.
Mm.
And of course, it's important to remember that browser updates can sometimes break Selenium scripts.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you might need to update your code or wait for a fix from the Selenium community.
Good reminder that staying up to date is crucial.
Absolutely.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive,
Mhm.
what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I want them to remember that it's not about memorizing every single command or knowing the answer to every question. It's really about demonstrating a deep understanding of Selenium's core concepts, its strengths and limitations, and the thought process behind choosing the right approaches for different scenarios.
It's about showcasing your problem-solving skills,
Yeah,
your ability to think critically, and your passion for the craft of test automation.
precisely. Interviewers want to see that you're not just a code monkey,
Right.
but a Selenium ninja who can navigate complex challenges and deliver robust solutions.
So to our listeners who are prepping for the Selenium interviews, embrace those tricky questions.
Yes.
Dive deep into those concepts and show those interviewers that you're ready to take on the challenges
Yes.
of web automation with confidence and expertise.
Best of luck on your Selenium journey.
And remember, continuous learning is key in this ever-evolving field.
It really is.
And if you ever find yourself needing a refresher or want to explore a new testing topic, you know where to find us. The Deep Dive is always here to guide you through the depths of knowledge and empower you to become a better, more confident tech professional. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep pushing those boundaries.